This is a video interview with Mr. John Russell. Those present are myself, Ron Boreham for the Sunderland Trust, and Graham Clarkson, who is looking after the video for the Sunderland Trust. John, welcome to the Heritage Centre. And I don't know how you'd like to do this. Would you like to just talk, or do you want me to apply questions?
Well, you'd like to know a bit about me, I suppose.
I think so, yes.
I have given a talk on this, and also for Probus at the time.
So probably just as well then to do that.
That I carried down, I thought you might like to look at after. And also, there's the Stirling.
Oh gosh, yes.
That's a nice picture of it there.
Can you get that in, John? What trade were you in the RAF?
Flight engineer.
You were flight.
And second pilot.
Well, you were second pilot as well.
Yes.
As a flight engineer, because
yes.
You only carried one pilot, didn't
That's
you?
That's all. Yes.
And the same with the Lancaster as well.
Same as the Lancaster.
Yeah.
I was originally, when I went to ITW, I was going in on the PNB,
Yeah.
and got to Torquay in December 42 it was, and doing dinghy drill.
Oh yes.
I was in the dinghy, and the fellow before me getting out of the dinghy, pulling up with his harness, it broke off and it landed on my head.
Oh.
So I was 5 days in the sick bay, and I missed the posting with that intake, and then they moved me in various places fairly fast, and I ended up as a flight engineer after going to Lockheed and then to St Athens and spending time on a link trainer, and then after that I went to Nosal for Tiger Moth training, and also then flying in Ansons.
Yeah.
And then after that there was OTU on Wellingtons.
Yes.
And then on to Stirlings, and eventually on to Lancasters. So that was my life as flying.
Yes.
Notes that to be of interest now. From the initial training wing at Torquay, as I say.
Did you volunteer for aircrew?
Yes, I was farming before, as a boy with my uncle on the farm down here in South Lanarkshire.
Yeah.
And he was the labour officer at that time, and of course I had the eldest brother was at sea, and the next brother was in the bank, and he went into the army, and my father had been in the First World War, when worse luck he had a nasty time of it, and I went down then onto the farm with an uncle there, but as I told you, he was the labour officer, and when I was in town the boys all said, "Oh, you're safe, but I joined up, so because the other brothers were in it as well. Yeah,
so you were all three services.
The three services, so Mother had a tough time really with the three of us in. That was my start of going then to London by train. I think that was about the first time I'd been on the train.
Yes.
Went to Swansea, of course, for the interview, and that's where you were interviewed.
Yeah.
And then to Lord's Cricket Ground.
Yeah.
And slept then under the stands in Lord's Cricket Grounds on wire netting, which I only thought was for poultry at that time, and marched then to Regent Park, because that's where we had our food fed with the Lions.
Yeah.
And then back, and then got down to Torquay for the initial 6 weeks it's supposed to have been.
Oh yes.
But that didn't materialise for me. So went on from there, as I said, locking for an initial.
Well, that was ITW, was it?
Yeah.
Locking.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
initial training wing.
Yeah. Is that where they did sort of selection? What?
No, well, we had the selection at Torquay.
You had that there?
Yes, at Torquay. And then I went on to locking because they put me as an engineer then.
Yes.
And then on to St Athens, which was a good station at St Athens.
Yeah. I think even when I was in the RAF, most of our flight engineers all trained at St Athens.
Athens, yes.
Mm.
Yeah. And then, as I say, after St Athens, I went to a small airport in Stafford, it was, as for to play with Tiger Moss, and also flew in and had control then with a dual control Anson,
Yeah.
which was the next thing to a bomber, I suppose.
Yeah, I did my training on Ansons.
Yeah. And then on to the Wellington ODU.
Yeah.
And that was night flying jobs. And then after that, I was at Finninley, where I met the Stirling.
Yeah.
And from there, flew it from various places at that time, because that was just coming up to the crossing in 44
For D-Day.
for D-Day.
Yeah.
And they wanted, well, before we went round and we flew in the Stirling, then low level, well, at under 100 feet, but after 100 feet you don't know what height you are, because the altimeter doesn't work, does it?
No.
So then around the Eidanger Islands, which are off Bergen,
Yeah.
and at 4 o'clock in the morning was our time for arrival. So that meant leaving about, well, being 3 hours or with briefing hand to get there, and flying out there then, and at 4 in the morning, and dropping 4 mines that we carried, and they were let off at 10 intervals, count 10. No clock,
No.
count 10. And that was up to the navigator. He was then,
Yeah.
there was no bomb aimer then. It was up to the navigator. He knew where we were and so forth. And he counted, and you had a certain level at that height.
Yeah.
And that was at 4. And then they say then at about 9 o'clock, when the minesweepers came out, the Americans took over then with the B-17s, because they had cannons on either side of them, as the boats would slow down to try and put the nets to get the mines, or to blow them up or something. And then with cannons they were sitting ducks.
Yeah.
And it seemed to work, because the German naval boats never came down into the channel when we did the crossing 44.
No.
Of course, we knew nothing of what was going to happen.
No. No, of course, this was just prior to the invasion of Norway.
Well, it wasn't Norway. It was before the crossing into France.
France, yeah.
Yes.
But I think it was on the cards.
Yes, it was on, but nobody knew anything.
No.
Because even they stalled one day, because that was, we were sat in the aircraft all day on the 5th of June. Didn't know whether to take off, not to take off, because Eisenhower hadn't arrived, or whatever it was at that time. So at that time, though, they had the dummy invasion all lined up in Scotland, with tents up there off north of Lucas it was,
Yeah.
and making a mock of activity up there with some tents and little jeeps running around everywhere trying to be active as everything, and of course the Germans swallowed that and they moved a lot of their stuff up to meet an invasion into Norway, which never happened, see. We went not to Calais, we went right down to Cairn.
Yeah.
So that was the answer then, and flew over the with mines over the the islands just off Bergen, Frisian Islands.
Frisian, that's it.
Get
Yes.
in.
Oh, I know the feeling.
So then we had minding exercises, more or less flying out to Swinderby. Now I think it's Swinderby, or is it Sileston?
It could have been either, because there were so many bomber stations in Lincolnshire and down the east coast that...
yeah, well, I'm not quite certain where we come from, but then I was there for a while until September, and went down to Tivenham, that's Norfolk,
Yeah.
and did a training then to tug gliders from with the Stirling.
With the Stirling,
But I think we only had but one tug, and it was then to Arnhem, and that was cruel.
Yeah.
I really felt very empty letting go.
Letting go, yeah.
And the rear gunner swearing like hell, having to pull the cable back in.
Yeah.
Because that was his job. And we were nearly back home before the cable came in.
Yeah.
From Arnhem. And that was a very nasty feeling, I can assure you.
Yeah.
You felt the tug at full throttle and you were hardly moving.
Yeah. Because the Whitley didn't cruise very...
Well, the Stirling.
The Stirling, rather.
Look, it was a beautiful aircraft to fly. She flew beautifully. But all the others, you had to work at it.
Yes.
But somehow you could glide in a Stirling. But I know you didn't have far to fall for Angels, because they only got to about 12,000 feet.
Yeah.
But that was the ceiling for the Stirling. But the radial engine was a smooth engine.
Yeah.
Hercules.
Yeah.
They were very, very good and reliable.
Yeah.
And not, well, as I say, about 180 was downwind. But as I say, a ceiling of about 12,000.
Yeah.
And not a big load.
No.
No. But I don't know whether you, as you say, you flew on in the Sunderland, which was the sister ship of the Stirling.
Yeah.
And well, if she flew like the Stirling flew, you had a very comfortable ride.
Oh yeah, the Sunderland was lovely, but it only cruised at 120 knots.
Yes, yes.
It didn't go very quickly.
No, and there's a bigger bulk, isn't it, and a bigger frame. So that was my life then on the thing, and then went to what they call it.
Was there any reason why you moved on to Lancaster?
Yes, because that was the end of Stirling's doing any operational work at all.
Yeah.
They were only then
training.
Well, training and dropping food parcels as far as I could.
Yeah.
And then I went on to 61 at Skellingthorpe.
Yeah.
And then I finished the tour there and for the tour. And finished up then more or less in April 45.
Yeah. Yeah, when did you go on to the Pathfinder squadron?
Well, that was then, straight after then, down to PFF at Conisby to go out to the Japanese.
Ah, yes.
And we got as far as, it was north of Karachi. And don't go there, the curry was bloody terrible.
Yeah, I've been there.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, not desirable. I never wanted to go back east again. And at any rate, that was stopped there, and we never got any further. The Americans had dropped the bombs, and back we came, and then, oh, but in between that we were doing exodus, what they call it, picking up chaps who came out of the prisoner of war camps.
Oh, yes.
And also, well, flying the wasps down the road to show them where the rest bed was.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were wasting time but flying then.
Yeah.
Until, as I say, went out then for that the Japanese job. But that was all over in August, wasn't it?
Yes, that came to a quick end.
That was a blessing.
Once the bomb went, that was it.
That was a blessing.
Yeah.
Because, well, the way that the Japs were acting, and my brother had a very tough time through out with General Slim.
Yeah.
Out there in the jungle. That wasn't nice. He had a medal for his work out there. He was in charge of a platoon.
Yeah.
And the Japs were holding a lot, and he played the accordion. So about 5:30 one night, as it was getting dark and everything, he started playing the accordion, and they all popped their heads up over this post and wondered what the hell was going on, and they had the machine gun and took the post.
Yes.
So he had his medal for initiative.
Yes.
That's on his secretariat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was that, and that finished it. But the trips that I did really then from '61 at Skellingthorpe. I think I got that in here somewhere. There we are. The raid that did there was Essen.
Yes, this was on Pathfinder squadron.
No, this was on 61.
Oh, on 61, before the Pathfinder.
I went to 83 to go to Japan.
Ah, I see. So you didn't actually fly the Pathfinder
No,
operations over Germany?
no,
No.
no, not Pathfinder. Ordinary 61 squadron trips was at Essen, the synthetic oil, the oil refinery, and then Dresden. That was some long trip now.
Yes,
That
that's a
was
long way.
10 odd hours flying there, but it was quiet over Dresden from our point of view. Didn't have big guns. We went in over it 3 times on different markers,
Yes.
flying over it, because they thought we'd never ever get to Dresden.
No.
And mind, the fire at Dresden, well, I can tell you, that was a blaze
Yes.
when we left there. That really was a
Yeah.
hotbed. I've never seen it. Well, we did have another fire like that when we were over
Yeah, well, they had a firestorm,
yeah,
didn't they, because of the bombing? I mean,
Because
lots
of
of
the
people
bombing,
were
yeah.
killed, not with the bombing, but
Firestorm.
with the firestorm.
Yeah, Yeah, they were running like rats.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, there were people found in sort of shelters.
yeah,
They were dead
yeah.
through
Cooked.
lack of air.
Yeah, cooked. Yeah, yeah, and other trips then that followed was in the Midland Canal at Gravenhurst. That was a raid on that, and of 154 were on that raid, and we had no losses there. Dortmund was a bit more metal bayonet
Yeah.
at Dortmund, and that was a canal pump station and a coal synthetic oil plant. Flak damage to wings and flap, landed at Wittering,
Oh.
because we were peppered a bit and had no brakes, and so they hit the hydraulics. So that meant winding down the bloody wheels.
Yeah.
960 turns,
Yeah.
825 for flaps, 960 for wheels.
Yeah.
And we finished up by pulling up the bloody undercart. And that was 3.5 miles of grass at Wittering.
At Wittering, yeah.
Did you ever know Wittering?
Yeah, I served at Wittering.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, but we had Harriers there when I was there.
What year was that then?
Oh, that was after. No, I'm just trying to think now. When did I go to Wittering? 1980.
Yeah, well, was it still grass then?
No, we had to one hard runway and a northern taxiway that we used as a secondary runway.
But you could see what 3.5 miles was like.
Yeah.
I always think it was from Pembroke to Everson. Going ups and down hills and then still getting on. Yeah. That was a bit of a thing. Hamburg was the shipyards, was another one. Boheim was synthetic oil plant. At Wesel was an operation where we did have a praise from Montgomery on the effectiveness of that raid. We managed to get the bridge, and it went to Wesel. That was quite a trip there. Hamburg again, Northernhausen. That was a military place with tunnels were used for the V2s.
Oh yes.
And that's rockets, and that was a low-level attack. We had to get down to find them.
Yeah.
Covered with all sorts of washings
Yeah.
over that. Then Lusendorf, that was a long trip there for synthetic oil refinery and storage depot. And then we did an exodus in April and May, which I told you about.
Yeah.
You know, we did the exodus trips, bringing the POWs
Back home.
and also dropping food to the Western Holland.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was the that's more or less the tour of what I did do. Unless there's any questions, eh?
Yeah. You didn't stay in. Did you leave the RAF?
47.
In 40. Oh, you stayed till 47.
Yeah.
They're still flying.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But flying. I was an instructor at Silverstone.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I didn't do a lot of flying. There was
No.
I spent a good bit of time in Northampton Cattle Market.
Yes. Yeah, well, coming from a farming family.
Well, yes, and also you'd be surprised at the number of dealers who had land up there. I don't know whether you ever come across the Morse family from Larne. They were big farm there, and they were cattle dealers, and they found that Northampton was a good cattle market for buying and selling. So I used to meet up then and kept in, because it came out in 47, but and immediately there was a job waiting for me, because being at on the squadron at 61, one event late getting back, and the padre drank all the rum ration.
Oh.
So I took him back to the mess, and returning his utility the next day at noon, we had a chat together, and he said, could I help him out? As I'd been a farm boy, I'd been to marts and so forth. So he said, you know how the auction works? Would you like to try it with the cars and motorbikes which are in the compound? Because I've got to get rid of them. The parents don't want them. Will you hold an auction sale? So I did. I got him on the rostrum and I kicked off, because I knew how it went. So as I came back to Pembroke in 47, I was at Kilgetty Mart selling calves straight away. And then I served my articles in Narberth for 3 years, and then joined Benning's Stackpole.
Oh yes.
And we opened a land agency practice, and I was in that until 2009.
Yes.
I sold my practice out to Edward Perkins of Harford West.
Yes.
And by that time I'd collected about 30,000 acres of management.
Yes.
So I've had a busy and enjoyable life, really,
Yes.
from that point of view. Been my own master, really, at that time.
Yeah. And how did you find the Lancaster compared to the Stirling?
Oh, heavier.
A lot heavier.
Yes, and not so quick
On the controls?
on the controls.
No.
Heavier altogether,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, lots of people that I've spoken to have said the Lancaster was very, very heavy to fly.
Well, you had to fly here where the others, you were a pilot, and you joined in.
Yes.
Yeah, with this. Well, the difference was you were at 20-odd thousand feet, and you had to watch it because you were sinking.
Yeah, because it was still
Unless
all
you
manual control.
Yeah, unless you kept up and increased your throttles and your consumption all the way in the rarer air. I know you might have been travelling further, but you had to give it more go to keep her. And at Flying Lancs, we were under much stricter control of where you had to fly, what height you had to fly. So you weren't looking out all the time, you were looking at instruments a good bit of the time to make sure that you weren't in night time.
No.
No,
there were so many aircraft in the air at once. It was.
Well, you had to keep your ceiling, didn't you?
Yes.
And immaterial to what you thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you, well, that's why I think I'm here, because we did by the Flying Bible at, and a very good, well, the rear gunner we had, he was a Cockney, and he was a barrow boy, and his language was choice.
Yeah.
He didn't know port or starboard, he'd never heard of such things, but I can tell you, he loved his bloody guns.
Yes.
And he'd start bloody firing and then tell you, you know, and then he'd say, F off. So